Of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, spent over a decade at WWL Television and Sports. Many awards there, including an Edward R. Murrow Award, a Sun Coast Emmy Award. Actively involved in covering the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, LSU, Tulane, and prep sports for many years now, and was hired by Fox 8 as sports director earlier this year, and he's doing an excellent job there as well. Please welcome to the Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation Quarterback Club from WVUE Television, Juan Kincaid. Juan?
Thank you very much, and I don't think Ken mentioned that this is my first time speaking here. 14 years, change of a job, and a little money in his back pocket, and I finally got to talk to you guys. So I appreciate it, Ken. There you go. Like I said, a little more money in your back pocket. It's so nice to be here, and I was driving here this morning. I was thinking about this afternoon, thinking about how great it is to be a sports fan in Louisiana right now. We've got the big three going on with the Saints. They're finally starting to win. LSU can't stop winning, and our Pelicans start tonight, and we're expecting them to win big this season. You know, we host a show at Fox called The Black and Gold. Jim Henderson's Black, let me get that right, because he'll find out I mentioned his name. The Jim Henderson Black and Gold review show on Monday nights at 10:30 on Fox. And Jim and I did that show last night. And one thing we talked about with the Saints is how this reminds us of the 2009 season a little bit, that they're playing complementary football. They haven't been flashy, haven't been dominant. They've let us down some. Unlike 09, they didn't let us down at all. But they've done it by being simple. They played good defense, opportunistic defense, and the offense has scored some points. And now we've got ourselves a 2-game winning streak. And I was thinking 3 and 4 never felt so good. So two-game winning streak for the first time since Halloween of last year. That's good. It seems like a long, long time ago. The next 3 games are against the Giants, Tennessee, Washington. Then you add in Houston, back to Carolina and Tampa, and Detroit. I think it's 7 games that they can win. You're seeing a team that's getting healthier, and players are starting to come back. You're getting better efforts out of the offense. You're getting a better effort out of the defense. And for the last year and a half, we haven't really talked about the defense because they haven't really given us anything to talk about. We've had so many players that have been injured, guys not playing up to expectations. But I'll be the first to say I've been very disappointed in Cam Jordan, but I'm going to sing his praises for a second. I mean, he has 5 sacks in the last 2 games, and he's the one guy I've been waiting to see start to earn his paycheck, the new contract he got, and he's playing really well. But he and Kevin Williams and Bobby Richardson and Tyler Davidson, guys that you don't really know much about outside of Jordan, that have kind of come together here in these last 2 games and just played their butts off and really played well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a kid that grew up at Mac 35, basically played there in Delvin Breaux. You think about the path that he's taken to get to where he is now. You know, he is an NFL rookie who played in Canada, like Brandon Browner. He's had recruited by LSU. They honored his scholarship even though he suffered a tragic neck injury in a game on special teams. Didn't think he'd play again, much less. Didn't think he'd maybe live through that, but he got through that, got back on the playing field, given a clean bill of health, is playing fantastic football. And now you've got guys like Browner and Keenan Lewis back there. But Delvin Breaux has been your best cornerback. He's your number 1 cornerback right now, and he's a kid that we can't help but sing the praises of. He's been so good this year, and God willing, continues to play the way he is right now. The offense with Drew Brees hasn't been flashy, but it's been effective, and he's not making the dreaded mistake, even though he had that pass that he ran out to the left and went across the line of scrimmage and backed up from the line of scrimmage and threw it up in the end zone, and it was intercepted, but it was called back. So that was the only mistake he made, and really made in the last 2 weeks. But I think the number 1 thing going for this team right now is Sean Payton's comeback. You know, he's come back to being what we got so accustomed to seeing for the first 10 years. A guy that was aggressive and didn't care and believed in his team, and that, you know, anything I call is going to work because they have the personnel. And again, they don't have flashy play. They don't have a number 1 receiver right now. They got a bunch of guys that have kind of come together and said, okay, I'll assume this role and I'll do this and I'll do that. And you've got a running game that's finally working again after being ranked 31st in the NFL with rushing. But Sean Payton has been the difference in the last 2 games. The fake field goal was fantastic. I mean, like Les Miles, conjured Les Miles for a second. It was wonderful. Just thoughts like that of being aggressive and not settling for things. And eventually the kicker situation is going to iron itself out. It may take a couple more years, but we'll see. But I do think that with Sean Payton being the coach that he used to be, and coaching the way he has always done here, I think that makes a huge difference because it puts a kind of a belief in the players that, our coach is calling a play because he believes he can make this play work, and they've been doing that. And this has been a fun team to watch for the last 2 weeks. Not so much fun for the first 5 weeks. But it's like, what have you done for me lately? The other thing I want to talk about is LSU, and Justin looks like he can still play. I mean, I know it's a contact thing. Can you take a hit still? You might. Les Miles might call and see if you got 4 more years. I'm sure there's some way they can sneak him in. But it's all about Leonard Fournette. And, I mean, St. Aug kid, grew up here. We love watching him play. And we know how teams are going to play LSU. 9 in the box, forcing the pass. Leonard has almost 1,352 yards, 15 touchdowns in 7 games. He's averaging almost 200 yards rushing per game. But everybody wants to know what they can do against Alabama. We'll see in 2 weeks. I think Alabama's going to take the same approach. People want to say it's not Miles versus Saban, but it's always going to be Miles versus Saban in LSU fans' minds, right? Yeah. Because one guy left us and didn't come back to us, and the other guy was a replacement and won a championship with his players, and so they say. But Les has been very good for the program. Every year, they want to get rid of him, they being a lot of people in Tiger Nation. But I say, find me a coach that's going to win you an average of 10 games a year in college football, and then let's talk about it. It's hard to do that. And recruiting-wise, they keep getting the best players in the state. You got a kid there, right? What's his name again? Yeah, caught his first touchdown. Tyron Johnson. I mean, there's so much talent in this state, and LSU seems to grab them every year. I'm glad they finally have a quarterback that can throw the ball to these receivers. That's what's been missing. And Brandon Harris, they exercised patience last year, and it's paying off this year. Back-to-back 200-plus yards games. They've leaned on the passing game the last 2 weeks because they've had to. Teams have done to them the last 2 weeks what Bama's going to do, Ole Miss is going to do, A&M's going to do, which is stack the box, force you to beat us with a throw. Can you do it? And Brandon Harris is showing that, yeah, I can do it. And he's been talking the last couple of weeks about how he's loved that challenge of teams not expecting him to do anything. I think the only thing now I was concerned about is the receivers not catching balls. A lot of drop balls by the receivers over the last 2 weeks, but this past week they played very, very well. Jimmy was talking about Tulane and what their problems are there. I love Curtis Johnson. I think Curtis Johnson's been the best thing for this program they've had in the last 10, 15 years since I've been here. Because when I first came to New Orleans in 2001, I would cover high school football every Friday night, go to a high school every Thursday, and all the coaches would tell me, well, Tulane's never been to this campus. The coaches never come out here and look at our players. When Bob Toledo came on board after Chris Selfo, Bob made it a point to have a 5-camp caravan around the state every year, every summer, to introduce himself and the staff to local players. That's where it began. And so now you look at this team, and they're almost 70% Louisiana players. Now, what I think Curtis has failed himself is that you look at the last recruiting class, less than 20 players recruited, not very many guys on the offensive and defensive lines. They've got to get bigger, especially on offense. The offensive line was supposed to be their strength this year. And you look, it's been a big failure for them this year. I'm still on the fence with Tanner Lee, the quarterback. I think he's a talented high school quarterback. I'm not sure how good he can be at the college level. Conference USA is not the American Conference. American's a step up. Curtis knew that, and I think he's got to pick up the pace with the recruiting on that situation. I think they have great skill players. I think they lack a little bit at wide receiver, but Devin Breaux is coming around. Good player, but I think they lack there. Defensively, I think they're as good as anybody in the conference. I really do. And you're right, Jimmy. They've lost games because their offense can't stay on the field, and their defense gets too tired. Against Navy, a fantastic performance, but they've got to get some help from the offense. And finally, tonight, one more thing about CJ. I think CJ needs to be kind of like Les Miles in that we don't want Les Miles calling plays. We want Les Miles being the face of the team, all the interviews, saying the right things, encouraging the players, and he needs to have good people around him, which LSU does. Tulane needs to question themselves on the supporting staff. The offensive coordinator, is he doing his job? The special teams coach, is he doing his job? If you go based on results, then changes need to be made in those two areas, in my opinion. All right, finally, the Pelicans. I'm so happy the basketball season starts tonight. I grew up in North Carolina, as Ken mentioned, so I'm a huge Tar Heel fan. I'm a huge basketball fan. And so when I worked in North Carolina, I used to cover the Hornets. And of course, the Hornets followed me here. That was cool. And they got to cover them here. And now they changed to the Pelicans. And we've got our second franchise player in Anthony Davis. Chris Paul was the first, but I think Davis is something special. It's interesting that people talk about him in the same way they talk about Bill Russell, and how much he won, just the way he played the game. And I talked to Davis in the interview last week, and he said, I've heard those comparisons. He says, but I haven't won anything yet. Russell did nothing but win. But you feel like that if this team does right by Anthony Davis, that they're going to win some things here. He's being mentioned as an MVP candidate along with LeBron James. But you have to have a team around you to get that MVP consideration. And so it's going to be interesting to see that right now you got a team that has 6 players injured. Starting tonight at Golden State, they're going to be missing half their starting lineup. I think the verdict is not in yet on Alvin Gentry. He hasn't won a lot as a head coach, but he won a championship as an assistant with Golden State last year. He's changing the offensive mindset, the mentality. He wants to run, and score. He wants to put up 100 shots per game, thinking that 75% will fall, outscore the opponent, play a little bit of defense. It will be one thing. It'll be exciting to watch. They're the Brazil soccer team of the NBA. It'll be exciting to watch. I think they're going to win a lot of basketball games. And I think Anthony Davis is going to be right there at the end, barring a health scare in the MVP voting. How can they do in the West? I don't know. We'll see. But the Western Conference is stacked. Golden State's going to be good again. San Antonio's a team to beat when they've made so many moves in the offseason, and they've got Coach Popovich there. I think Chris Paul and the Clippers are still in the mix. Houston's going to be there. I mean, there's a lot of good basketball teams in the Western Conference. If the Pelicans could move back to the East, they'd be challenging for the 2 with LeBron and Cleveland. But that's not going to happen. So we've got a basketball team that's going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. I hope the fans will get out there and support this team, because this is the best team I think this team has had in a long, long time, since Chris Paul and David West and Tyson Chandler. That team, which almost went to the Western Conference Final. Get out there and support your team. Get out there and support the Zephyrs. It's the best value money can buy, and it's a good product, and it's a lot of fun. If you have kids like I do, you understand that. Anyway, that's all I have for today. I appreciate Ken inviting me today for my first time here. I hope to get to come back one time again soon. Thank you very much. Any questions you have?
Raise your hand.
You also do that 4th down on 4.
I used to do 4th down on 4. Well, okay, listen, I left 4 in January. That's okay. No, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. I left 4 in January, went to Fox. Now we have Final Play on Sunday, which is the same thing, but better than 4th down on 4. Just saying, check the ratings, just saying. Right, Dan?
Right, check the ratings.
No, but we do Final Play on Sundays, and that's followed by the, gosh, there's so many shows. No, that's Final Play on Sunday. Then on Monday, Jim Anderson's Black and Gold Review. On Mondays at 11:05. And then on Thursday nights, we have the Game Plan show with Sean Vazan and I doing that show. So we have a lot of programming. We just did a Pelicans preview show last night. We're thinking about doing a Pelicans weekly show in January, still working on that. So there's a lot of things going on with our station right now. Anybody else?
Raise your hand.
That's it? Dan.
Are you hearing anything about moves with the station? I saw an industry article talking about Miami being interested in swapping stations with New Orleans.
Well, actually, it's Orlando.
Orlando,
And
that's
the
what I meant.
O&O, Fox owned and operated station in Orlando, talking about, it was a report. Kind of like the Leonard Fournette report. Someone throws one out there and starts the rumor. We were told by the GM there's no truth to it. Neither side's been contacted by anybody.
But that's a much bigger market, I would think.
Well,
really wouldn't
what it
happen.
would be is they would take, I don't know if they wouldn't take our call letters, but we would end up being owned by the Fox network. So we don't know. They'd be owned by Raycom. So it'd be a smaller market ownership for them. Fox network likes to have stations in every NFL city. That's kind of what they're doing now. So they're looking at us as, allegedly looking at us as the network station. Wouldn't change our newscast at all. Our newscast would be the same, 4 to 6 every day, 9 to 10:30. I'm still getting used to those things, though. Other good times. Anything else? Thank you very much. Have a great day.